Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show that cuts through the noise to get you straight to the most important insights. Today, we're plunging into, well, a truly surprising hotbed of innovation in global finance. Forget what you might think you know about the traditional financial powerhouses. Because while Silicon Valley and London, yeah, they certainly play their part, one country has, quietly, but decisively, been leading the charge in digital payments, becoming a real-world blueprint for the future. We are talking about Brazil. This deep dive is your shortcut to understanding the remarkable, dynamic, and incredibly innovative payment industry in Brazil. Our mission today: uncover how the South American giant went from traditional payment methods to becoming a genuine leader in digital financial transformation. We're going to unearth some surprising facts and key insights you probably won't find anywhere else, showing why Brazil is, well, a global model.
Yeah, and this isn't just about impressive financial figures either, not at all. This deep dive is really about how an entire nation profoundly reshaped its relationship with money. It's impacted millions of lives in the process. It's a story of societal and economic transformation, really driven by bold financial innovation.
Okay, so to truly grasp this evolution, we need to start with a core idea. What makes Brazil's financial system so uniquely dynamic right now?
Yeah.
Our sources point to it being not just innovative, but a global leader in digitalization and, importantly, financial inclusion. What makes it so dynamic, especially compared to, say, more established hubs?
That's a great starting point. The scope, you see, of the Brazilian payment market is just vast
Yeah.
and incredibly complex. Think of it like this intricate web, entities, institutions, technologies, all working to make sure money moves securely, swiftly, and efficiently across the entire country. And it
Wow.
goes way beyond just your everyday retail stuff like buying coffee or groceries.
Yeah.
We're talking everything from paying bills, electronic transfers, all the card types, credit, debit, prepaid, and of course the big one now, Pix. What's maybe less obvious is it also covers really complex B2B operations, even international commodity transactions. And interestingly, because of some local restrictions on traditional methods like letters of credit.
Which are like a bank guarantee for trade payments.
Exactly. Because those were restricted, Brazil kind of had to develop alternative payment models, things like prepayment but with secure documentation, or payments and installments tied to specific project milestones. This necessity, it really sparked a lot of early innovation.
That makes sense. Necessity being the mother of invention.
Yeah.
But does that specialization, that complexity, maybe create specific vulnerabilities that a more standardized system might avoid? Or is it just more adaptable?
It's a fair question. The complexity definitely means a constant need for adaptation and, yeah, strong regulatory oversight. But it's also forged a system that's incredibly resilient and versatile. It pushes the boundaries of what payment systems can actually do.
Okay, so it's clear this didn't happen overnight. Let's rewind a bit. How did Brazil get here? You mentioned the journey started way back with indigenous barters, then coins, paper money, checks. How did those foundations shape what came next?
Well, they laid the groundwork, obviously. But the real modernization, that picked up pace with global credit cards in the 50s. They really took off in Brazil, though, in the 1970s, especially with the magnetic strip. Then, a big step in 2002 was the chip. That brought a whole new level of security, which was crucial for building consumer trust. And the 90s, naturally, brought e-commerce, expanding as more people got online.
Okay, so we've got the groundwork laid, cards, e-commerce starting up. But what was the specific catalyst, that turning point that really ignited the digital payment revolution we see now? What pushed it beyond just gradual growth?
Right. Well, funny enough, contactless tech, NFC, it was actually around since 2008. But it wasn't until the COVID-19 pandemic that it really drastically accelerated. Mass adoption happened almost overnight. It truly pushed what our sources are calling the dematerialization of money. We're now looking at projections where the volume of cashless transactions could actually double by 2030.
Double by 2030. Wow, that's a huge shift in behavior in less than a decade.
It really is a profound shift.
And this rapid acceleration, it wasn't just circumstance, right? There was a key regulatory moment underpinning it.
Exactly. That's crucial. Law number 12.865 back in 2013. This law wasn't just some minor regulatory tweak. It was fundamentally Brazil deciding to sort of democratize finance. It deliberately opened the door for the first time for non-financial institutions to provide payment services.
Ah, okay. So not just banks anymore.
Precisely. That unleashed this competitive surge. It reached millions of people who were previously ignored by the traditional banking system. Honestly, it was a bold move. Many developed nations are still debating things like this quite cautiously. It fostered a much more efficient, competitive retail payment market, but crucially, while still ensuring operational security.
Right, so competition, but with guardrails.
Exactly. And at the very heart of this whole system is the Brazilian payment system, the SPB. This is the fundamental structure. It orchestrates all financial movements in the country, and it's managed and supervised directly by the Central Bank of Brazil, the BCB.
So the BCB isn't just acting like a traditional central bank then, setting interest rates and things. They sound more like an architect here.
That's a great way to put it, architect and supervisor. The SPB actually has this dual structure. On one side, you have the financial market infrastructures, or IMFs. Think of these as the secure highways, the vital bridges of the financial system. They're crucial for systemic stability, making sure everything runs smoothly, securely. The Interbank Payments Chamber CIP is a key part of this, handling massive volumes of interbank clearing.
Okay, the backbone.
Right. And on the other side, you have the payment arrangements. These are what drive the public-facing innovation, things you interact with, like PIX, the instant payment system, and credit cards.
It seems pretty unique for a central bank to be so hands-on in the development side. I mean, they created and manage PIX, right? And they're pushing open finance. How do they manage that balancing act, being a strict regulator and a driver of innovation?
It's definitely a delicate balance, but what really stands out is how deliberate and, frankly, progressive the regulatory framework has been. Law 12.865 from 2013, as we said, gave that legal certainty for the non-financial players. Then in 2021, you had BCB Resolutions 80 and 81. These really got into the details. Requirements for payment institutions, or IPs, strict standards for financial capacity, making sure their business model was sustainable, IT infrastructure, governance, even checking the reputation of their controllers.
It's pretty thorough.
Very thorough. It ensures robust, secure operations, but without completely stifling growth. And looking ahead, there's an important bill in the Senate right now, the SPB modernization bill. This aims to align Brazil with international standards, beef up the regulatory power of the BCB and another regulator, CVM, and significantly minimize settlement risk. It introduces this mechanism called patrimônio de afetação, which basically creates a kind of protective financial shield around customer funds moving through the system.
A shield. How does that work?
It essentially segregates those assets. So even if a payment company gets into financial trouble, the money they're handling for you, the customer, remains completely safe, untouched.
Got it. That must boost confidence hugely.
Absolutely. It boosts trust and stability across the board. This constant evolution of the law shows a really proactive regulatory approach, always trying to balance innovation with stability.
That protective financial shield is a great image. So with this robust system in place, who are the key players actually making it all happen day to day? Who's driving this ecosystem?
Right? The cast of characters. Okay, first, central to everything. The Banco Central do Brazil, the BCB, as we've discussed, they're the main regulator, the supervisor, ensuring price stability, a solid, efficient, competitive financial system, all that central bank stuff. But critically, they're also a major innovator. They built PIX, they're driving open finance.
So the central brain and the creative force.
Okay.
What about the traditional players? How are they fitting in?
Good question. You've got the financial institutions, your traditional banks, credit cooperatives. They operate directly with customers, initiate transactions, offer loads of services. With open finance, they're now actively sharing financial data with customer consent, of course. And crucially, participation in PIX is mandatory for any of them, with over 500,000 active customer accounts.
Mandatory. So they didn't really have a choice but to get on board.
Pretty much. It forced them to adapt to this new digital reality.
And what about those non-bank entities, the ones that really helped with that financial inclusion we talked about?
Exactly. Those are the institutions of payment, or IPs. These are legal entities set up to facilitate buying and selling, moving funds within a payment arrangement. But critically, they don't offer loans or financing. They are absolutely key for financial inclusion. They let people make payments using prepaid cards or just their mobile phones, often without needing a traditional bank account at all. They're serving a huge segment of the population that maybe traditional banks weren't reaching effectively.
Makes sense. And then who's handling the plumbing, making sure the transactions actually go through smoothly and securely?
Right, the behind-the-scenes operators. That's where acquirers and payment processors come in. Acquirers, they call them credenciadoras. They process and settle card payments. They're the link between the merchant, the card brands like Visa or MasterCard, and the bank that issued the card. They provide those card machines you see everywhere. They ensure the transactions are fast, secure, efficient.
Okay.
Payment processors, slightly different role. They handle the secure transmission of the transaction data to everyone involved, making sure accounts have funds, protecting sensitive info. Then you have the issuers. These are usually the banks or financial institutions that manage the relationship with the cardholder. They enable you to use the card, set your credit limit, handle billing, manage reward programs. They're vital for security and influence whether people adopt cards.
Got it. Card machine guys, data movers, and the card relationship managers.
You got it.
Yeah.
And finally, a massive driving force, fintechs. These tech-intensive companies are genuinely revolutionizing the market, new business models. They offer incredibly efficient, accessible digital services. They leverage advanced tech AI, machine learning, blockchain to challenge the old, sometimes rigid financial system. Their rapid growth, the investment they attract, it speaks volumes about their disruptive impact.
That's quite a lineup, everyone playing a specific, crucial role.
Yeah.
So how are Brazilians actually using this payment arsenal? What methods dominate their daily lives?
Well, our sources show that cards, credit, debit, prepaid are still really significant. Get this, in 2024, Brazil processed something like 45.7 billion card transactions. That's up over 8% from 2023.
Billion, with a B.
With a B, yeah. Credit cards led the way, about 19.8 billion transactions. But what's truly noteworthy here is the explosive growth of contactless.
Ah, yes, the pandemic accelerator.
Absolutely. In 2024, over 60% of in-person card payments were contactless, tap and go. That moved an astonishing 1.5 trillion reais. That's up nearly 50% year over year. It just shows how much consumers value that convenience and perceived or real security.
But the real game changer, the undeniable superstar of Brazil's payment scene. It has to be Pix, right? Their instant payment system.
Yeah.
Launched late 2020 by the BCB, 24/7, instant, free for regular users. It almost sounds too good to be true.
It does, but it's the real deal.
It's
Dex
not.
adoption has been vertiginous is the word, just incredible speed. Over 60% of the population and about 76% of Brazilians overall are using it now. This has made Brazil the second largest instant payment market globally, right after India. They accounted for something like 15% of all instant payment transactions worldwide in 2022.
15% from one country.
Yep, and by 2023, Pix became the second biggest payment method in Brazil, hitting 39% of all transactions. Just behind cards at 41%, it's catching up fast.
And that inclusion impact you mentioned. 65% of low-income Brazilians with bank accounts now have a Pix key. That's huge for bringing people into the formal system.
It really gets to the core of its disruptive power. Think about this. Pix achieved 35% penetration in household spending in just 4 years. Compare that to cards, it took them over 30 years to reach 52%.
30 years versus 4 years.
Exactly. It's an astonishing difference in speed. It really shows how central bank-driven innovation, especially when it's designed with the user absolutely front and center, can create a societal shift in years that market forces alone take decades to achieve. It fundamentally changed how Brazilians interact with money, not just how they pay for things.
And it's still evolving.
Oh yeah, they're working on Pix by approximation, basically contactless Pix using NFC, expected around March 2025. That could potentially replace a huge chunk of debit and prepaid card use. Even more convenient and significantly lower costs for merchants too.
So Pix is the star, cards are still big but changing.
Yeah.
What else is in the mix?
Well, Brazilians still use boletos. That's a unique Brazilian thing, like an invoice slip you can pay anywhere. Still used, especially for bills and installment payments. And TED and DOC, those were the old main ways to do real bank transfers. Their use has plummeted, though, thanks to Pix being instant, free, and 2047.
Makes sense. Why wait and pay?
Exactly. And one more big trend, everything's going mobile. Digital wallets now account for something like 82% of all transactions made via mobile phones in 2023.
82%. So the phone is really becoming the wallet.
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay, so looking ahead now, what's next? Where is this incredibly dynamic system heading?
Well, the evolution definitely isn't slowing down. Open finance is a massive trend. It's really the next stage after open banking. Open banking was mostly about sharing basic bank account info. Open finance expands that dramatically. We're talking insurance data, investments, pensions, even foreign exchange information, all, and this is key, only with explicit customer consent.
So my data, my control.
Exactly. It puts the customer right at the center. Implementation started in Brazil in 4 phases back in 2021. The expected impact's huge. More competition between providers, much more personalized services, and even greater financial inclusion. We're already seeing examples like Mercado Pago using payment data with permission to pre-approve loans for small businesses, using the data smartly.
So it's really empowering people with their own financial picture. That's powerful. Another exciting area you mentioned is cross-border payments and this idea of PIX International.
Yeah, there's huge demand globally for faster, more transparent, and cheaper international transfers. Remittances, B2B payments, it's often slow and costly right now. Brazil has this ambition to basically extend the PIX system globally. Imagine that, solving those long-standing problems. It could be a massive step for global financial connection.
A global PIX. That would
Yeah.
do something else.
Absolutely. And underpinning all this future development are emerging technologies. We're seeing a big shift to cloud native platforms. They offer the scalability and flexibility needed. Embedded finance is gaining serious traction. That's the idea that almost any business, even non-financial ones, can embed payment services directly into their platform. Think paying for parking through a navigation app or insurance through a travel site.
Making payments almost disappear into the background.
Exactly. Seamless. Tokenization is becoming essential too for security, replacing sensitive card data with unique tokens. And biometrics, facial recognition, fingerprint scans, they're set to become much more common, reducing reliance on physical cards or even passwords.
So the building blocks for an even more integrated, almost invisible payment future.
That's the direction, yeah.
It sounds incredibly promising. But like any rapid transformation, there must be bumps in the road. What are the key challenges Brazil is grappling with in this space?
You're absolutely right. It's impressive, but not without hurdles. A big one is fraud and security. Unfortunately, back in 2016, Brazil had the second highest volume of card fraud globally. That's a tough statistic. And while Pix is amazing, its speed and reach also create new avenues for fraud. So robust security measures from the BCB and everyone involved are constantly needed. Data protection, privacy under LGBT Brazil's data law, these are critical priorities.
So the faster you build the car, the faster you need to build the brakes and airbags.
That's a good analogy. It creates constant pressure, which leads to the next challenge: technological and regulatory adaptation. Technology evolves constantly, the regulations evolve constantly, institutions have to keep up, it's demanding. Entering open finance, for instance, requires huge operational and regulatory shifts, upgrading IT, revising contracts, ensuring strict LGBT compliance. It's a continuous cycle.
Sounds expensive and complex.
It can be. Then there's a persistent societal issue, indebtedness, especially with credit cards. In 2023, the average interest rate on revolving credit card debt was, well, staggering, 442% annually.
442%.
Yeah. Now, they did introduce a cap in December 2023. Interest can't exceed 100% of the original debt value, which is a big step. But high levels of debt, particularly among lower income groups, remain a significant problem. Affects about a quarter of that demographic.
That really underscores that financial inclusion isn't a magic bullet for deeper economic issues.
Well,
And finally, what about just reaching everyone?
exactly. The infrastructure and access challenge. Despite all the digitalization, making sure there's a robust network and that everyone, even in remote areas, has equitable access to these services. That's crucial for full financial inclusion. It's that constant tension. Innovate fast, but ensure security, protect consumers, and leave no one behind. It's a critical balancing act.
Those are definitely significant hurdles. But it feels like the opportunities are maybe even more compelling. What are the brightest spots on the horizon?
Oh, absolutely. A major one is inclusion and financial education. Like we said, Pix and Open Finance have literally brought millions into the formal financial system, expanded access for people who were previously on the fringes. It's not just about easy payments, it's about empowerment, economic citizenship almost.
And does that drive new products too?
For sure, diversification of products and services. These new technologies, open ecosystems like Open Finance, they're fostering incredible innovation. We're seeing more personalized, competitive financial products, better credit options, smarter financial management tools tailored to individual needs.
And the shift online seems permanent.
Definitely. The accelerated digitalization, especially boosted by the pandemic, has created entirely new growth areas for e-commerce, remote transactions. We saw remote credit card transactions hitting 1 in 3 of the total. That shows a lasting change in how people shop and pay.
And looking outwards.
Huge potential in cross-border expansion. Developing Pix International could genuinely revolutionize international transfers. More efficient, lower cost, meeting that growing global demand. It's a serious global play for Brazil.
And is the world noticing? Is investment flowing in?
Very much so. The sheer dynamism is attracting significant investment and partnerships. Major Brazilian fintechs, like Nubank and Stone, have already received substantial investments from big Chinese tech companies, for example. It signals that global players see Brazil as fertile ground for collaboration and growth. It's definitely got the spotlight.
Okay, let's put Brazil on the global stage then. How does it really stack up against other major markets?
Well, as we mentioned, its position as a leader in instant payments is undeniable. Second largest market globally by volume in 2022, processing 29.2 billion transactions,
Yep.
responsible for 15% of all global instant payments that year. That's a massive footprint.
15% is huge, and when you compare it to the United States, it's almost surprising.
It is. Experts genuinely say Brazil's payment methods are years ahead in security compared to the US, which, still relies more heavily on older methods, magnetic stripes still common. It really shows how quickly focused innovation can leapfrog established players.
What about China? They're obviously a giant in digital payments.
Right. China's fascinating. They have systems like Alipay, WeChat Pay, and the digital yuan, the ECNY. The ECNY seems clearly focused on retail, replacing physical cash, and maybe strengthening state oversight of finance. PIX, in contrast, while digital and state-driven, emphasizes efficiency, inclusion, perhaps more decentralization, less direct state control over individual transactions. Different philosophies. But interestingly, as we noted, China is also a major investor in Brazilian fintechs, so there's interaction there. Brazil's definitely ahead of the US and Mexico in electronic payments overall, but still behind China in the sheer volume of real-time transactions. China's scale is just immense.
And Europe, are they on a similar path with things like open finance?
Europe has definitely made big strides in open financial systems. MasterCard, for example, they've run over 100 open banking projects there since 2018. So there's a maturity in those concepts, quite similar to what Brazil is doing with open finance. They're on parallel tracks in some ways. And what's really telling is that other countries, especially in Latin America like Colombia and Mexico, are now actively looking at adapting models similar to PIX.
So Brazil's success is inspiring others.
Exactly. It suggests the Brazilian model is potentially replicable. It really reinforces Brazil's position at the forefront, acting as a genuine blueprint.
Okay, so let's try and wrap up this deep dive. What's the main takeaway? It seems clear Brazil's payment industry is transforming at, well, an incredible pace. It's really solidifying its place as a global leader. And this isn't just luck. It's down to this powerful mix, a strong, adaptive regulatory framework, the central bank, the BCB being proactively innovative, and just rapid, widespread adoption by people and businesses. It really does feel like a blueprint for digital transformation.
I think that's right. And the future really hinges on maintaining that crucial balance we talked about.
Right.
Rapid innovation on one hand, continuous, robust regulation on the other. That's what ensures stability, efficiency, but also that widespread access and ongoing financial inclusion. That balance is absolutely key for their continued success, especially on the global stage.
Absolutely. A fascinating look at a true financial innovator. And it leaves you thinking, as Brazil continues to lead this charge, how might your own financial interactions change in the near future? As these payment systems become even more integrated, more seamless, maybe even invisible in our daily lives. Something to ponder.